They were so intelligent, you wouldn't know what they'd do next. If a whale came into the bay and a killer saw it, that he would go to the mouth of the river and he would tail flop.
Mate, a noise at the bar and Dad'd hear it. He'd wake and he'd wake him.
Oh, well, you know, they'd bash their tail down on the water like a
rifle shot.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
It was more or less a pre-arranged signal. The killers knew what to do to alert them, and the whalers knew what the alert meant.
It's interesting, where the killer whales alerted the people is not where the whale chase was happening, often miles out to sea, but the killer whales went right to the Davidson's front door, literally. You can't say, oh, it was just accidental that they swam 10 kilometres away from where a hunt was.
You can imagine the mindset of the killers. We've done our part. Get out and get stuck into it.
There's a whale out there for you to catch. We're all here.
Because often it'd be black as night, certainly no way of seeing where a whale was far out to sea. It was unique in the world that they could go out whaling at night. The only reason they could go whaling at night is that the killer whales were leading them out. The only way you can know where you're going is that you have these massive animals in the ocean guiding and protecting you. It would have been a kind of a terrifying, amazing experience, being out in a freezing cold winter night. You'd lose track of the shore, it would have been a fog. If the people lost track of the killer whales who were leading them, they'd whack the surface of the sea with their oars. And then the killer whales would swim back. The killer whales are looking after the people, making sure that the people are following them, helping the people find the way to the hunt.
There it is over there.
They didn't try to kill it in the night. They wait until daylight and then chase it.
One of the key features of killer whales, hunting whales, is the use of shallow water. The best escape a baleen whale has from killer whales is to dive, because they can dive to a much greater depth and stay underwater for much longer than a killer whale can. Looking at Twofold Bay, you can see it's a relatively large bay, which means that a baleen whale is more likely to go in it, not to feel that it's going to be trapped, and yet it is actually a very good trap. It's a perfect spot to catch whales. Now, this is an account by David Steed, and here he's describing the killer whales' hunting strategies and operations in Eden. Here he says, the plan of operations of the killers is worked out with wonderful intelligence. They station themselves in strategic positions for the cutting off of the whale's retreat. We may call that movement number 1. They then begin to harry the whale from all sides, meanwhile working it gradually into the shallow water, rushing at it with great ferocity, leaping out of the water and crashing down on the whale's body, and doing everything possible to wear the poor beast out. The whole chase is arranged so intelligently and systematically as to be indicative of a very high order of reasoning ability.
Danielle believes that Europeans were not the first humans in Eden to think that the killer whales helped them to catch baleen whales. First were the Yuin people. In the Mitchell Library is a 100-year-old account of a ceremony Yuin men used to enact on the beach.
Here's the passage relating to the killer whales and the Yuin people. When the natives observe a whale near the coast pursued by the killers, one of the old men goes and lights fires at some little distance apart along the shore to attract the attention of the killers.
He then walks along from one fire to another, pretending to be lame and helpless, leaning upon a stick in each hand. This is supposed to excite the compassion of the killers and induce them to chase the whale towards that part of the shore in order to give the poor old man some food.
So it was all about eliciting the sympathy of the killer whales and encouraging them to help him.
When Europeans began whaling in Eden, Yuin men soon joined the crews of the whaling boats.
The Yuin people provided the reliable labour force for people like the Davidsons. They were particularly prized in the whaling industry because they were excellent at harpooning and boat handling skills, even though they're not a maritime culture as such. The Aboriginal whalers knew the killer whales by name. They regarded them as their relatives, as their brothers, as their guiding spirits.
Danielle believes that the early Aboriginal whalers may have initiated the law of the tongue.
The fact that the Aboriginal whalers were prepared to leave the whale carcass for the killer whales was probably the real starting point of the potential for that cooperative relationship, because European whalers would have assumed that the killer whales would just take the whole carcass and eat it all.
Another eyewitness account of early whaling in Eden was written by Oswald Briley, the whaling station manager in the 1840s.
When the whale is dead and being towed back home, the killers still follow it and sometimes take it bodily down. Under these circumstances, the body is buoyed and anchored, and generally it comes free again within 36 hours, minus the tongue, the favourite morsel of the killers.
So that seems to have been the genesis of it. If you're not going to drive off the killer whales, if you're not going to harm them, you have to learn to work with them. The European whalers very rapidly realised that actually it's quite beneficial to have the killer whales there, that actually you increase your harvesting rate. You can catch whales with a single boat that would actually normally take you 6 or 7 boats to harpoon if you're working with the killer whales. So this is why this scenario has probably only ever occurred in Eden and why it's so unique. That spiritual significance of the killer whales to the Yuin was present. It needed the extension of the European whaling industry to bring in some benefit to the killer whales themselves.
Elsewhere in the world, killer whales have only ever been observed hunting whale calves. But in Eden, a unique situation developed, allowing both killer whales and humans to do something that neither could have done on their own. Eden holds the world record for the largest whale ever caught from a hand-thrown harpoon.
There's a bay down south full of dolphin and billowing sail. Went a long way back with the killer whale pack, and the town was a living on wild. They lights to burn on the night's return, some of them are automobiles. So the factories wind and the whales decline at the mercy of the harpoon sneer, singing, well, oil, she blows, well, oil, not she rise, well, oil, the whale oil, well, with the killers are beaten. As the story goes, from one knows that the killers have come into the bay. The nose that saw from the virgin shore, so the killers lead the whalers away. While the longboats raced at a murderous pace, and the killers had the whale at bay. Waiting for the chance at a glance of the lands on the shore, the two-fold birds singing, well, on she blows, well, on up she rides, well, with the killers of